All right, so in this video, we're going to take a look at 5 projects that every programmer should try. And if you haven't tried these, then you really can't call yourself a programmer. You know that, right? No, but these are just projects that I think are really interesting. And the idea with this video is essentially to provide inspiration for you for projects that you could try and things that you can do. And I've also tried to include projects that I think will bulk up your resume in case you're looking to get your first job within programming. Then these projects will hopefully help you get a job a lot faster. So let's start off straight away with project number 1. The first one is a facial recognition project, and this is something that I think everyone should try. And this will give you some basic experience and understanding of AI and machine learning and how that works, which is super important and something that is highly sought after in the industry. So showing that you have a project like this on your resume is something that's really good. It's also something that's really fun to kind of just mess around with. And if you don't know anything about this going into the project, then learning a little bit about it will give you kind of a foundation of understanding within this subject that you can then use as sort of a filter or a base to stand on when you're listening to other people talk about how AI will change the world or how AI will impact the world in some way. You'll be able to then understand a little bit about whether what they're saying is actually true or whether it's something that you don't really think will happen. And there's some really interesting things that you can do here, and I would suggest starting out with a fairly simple script that you can then use to build and expand on, and you can create a lot more things from this. But the first thing I would do is just create a program that can recognize your face and then print out your name if it sees your face. If it sees someone else's face, it shouldn't print anything, and if it sees your face, it should print hello, whatever your name is. And for instance, what you could do and what I've seen other people do is actually build like a facial recognition password system into their computer. So if you don't have a computer with facial recognition, then you're essentially bypassing this by creating your own script for facial recognition. Not sure how safe it is, but it's one project that I think is really good to start with. And if you want something that's a lot more advanced, then I would suggest looking into creating your own filter, as you've seen on probably TikTok, Instagram, all these places. There are these filters you can create now that essentially track your face and create some sort of thing that shows up on your face. And essentially this is something that you could start building once you've created a script that actually will recognize your face. It's a lot more complicated, but it's something that you can do on top of this as well. And I know that some of you guys are probably thinking that right now that these projects are just way too hard to even look at right now. This is way beyond your level. But the reality is that there's actually lots of libraries available for Python. They're very easy to get started with, and you can very easily actually get started with facial recognition projects of different kinds. And you can also go from just the most basic machine learning type of stuff all the way up to the most cutting edge neural networks essentially. So there's lots of variety available within Python, and it's not that difficult to actually get started with. All right, so now for the second project, which is shell script automation. And these are my favorite type of projects. And you've probably seen like lots of my videos here on this channel where I've actually done different shell script automations. And I think they're really good because of the fact that you can actually speed up your workflow. And also automating different things is just a lot of fun, and it's so like satisfying to feel like, okay, I've actually automated a process that used to take me ages to do, or like I had to click all these different things every time I did that. But now I've automated that process so that I just have to click once, and then the computer just does everything for me. And there are really infinite possibilities here. The only thing that's restricting you is your own imagination for what you could come up with. And one of my favorite projects that I actually did was my GitHub project automation, which I made a video here on this channel a couple of years ago now. And that's by far the favorite thing that I've done, the most useful project that I've done as well. And so what this project actually did was it automated the process of creating a new GitHub repository for me. So now all I need to do is I just type in create followed by whatever name of the repository or project that I want to create. And then the script takes care of everything else for me. So what it does essentially is it goes to GitHub, it creates a new repository named whatever I decided to name it. Then it copies the URL for the repository. Then it goes to my local computer and it initiates a local repository. Then it connects that to the remote repository on GitHub. And then it adds a README file, and then it does the first commit, and then it pushes that to GitHub, essentially initiating the entire process. And I don't have to do any of that myself. It just gets done for me. I think this is just like the most satisfying automation that I've done so far, and I highly recommend actually trying this one out yourself. as your first automation or as an automation to try, because it is really such a good automation in my opinion, even though I might be a little bit biased. And if you don't feel like building it all yourself, then you can actually just clone my repository. I will link that in the description. And this repository has actually been improved a lot since I made that video, thanks to a lot of you guys who've actually helped improve the code and clean it up a little bit, make it make sense a little bit more than my code actually did back when I made the video. So thank you to all of you guys who've actually helped out. I think that was such a cool thing to see. That so many people got excited and just helped out with that project. And if you don't feel like doing that specific automation, then another one that I would recommend doing or trying out is actually a desktop cleaner. And what this would be is essentially, we all have like messy desktops, I think, at least I do. And we have different files, and it's kind of like a struggle because we know that if we're gonna sort that stuff, then it's going to take a long time because there's so many different files, so photos, text files, folders that we need to put in some sort of organized, structured folder somewhere where I don't really know where that would be, but we need to put it somewhere. And so what you could do is you could actually create a script that puts all of your different like text files into a text folder, and then the photos into a photos folder, and all of that sort of stuff. Or you could do something where you organize it by dates, for instance, where this date is where you put all the stuff that was created on that date, and then you just keep doing it like that. Or you go even deeper into it, so you put photos into a folder, and then within that folder you create dated folders, so you can have some sort of structure within the folders as well. And there's really like infinite possibilities and infinite details that you can go into for how you're going to organize this stuff. But it's a really good thing to do actually, because then as soon as you feel like your desktop is filling up with stuff, then you can just run that script and it will clean it all up for you and organize it in the way that you want, which is really cool. Another thing that I recommend is just going to Reddit and searching for shell script automation projects or project automation or Python automation, programming automation projects, those sort of things, because that's what I do for researching some of the videos that I make. And you can really find some very interesting projects to try out. And on Reddit, they also have the system of like upvoting stuff. So that means that you definitely know for sure that the best projects will end up on top. And also actually, if you're new to programming and you're looking to learn a little bit more about it, then I highly recommend actually checking out today's video sponsor, which is Brilliant.org. And they have a course called Programming with Python, and this is the course that I would recommend that you check out. And if you use the link in my description, you get a 7-day free trial of Brilliant Premium. So you can check out their course completely free. And I think their course overall is just a really great way to start, especially if you're a visual learner, because their courses are really visual and hands-on. And I really can't recommend Brilliant enough, and I think they're a great place, especially if you're interested in learning about computer science, whether it is learning how to code or whether you want to dive deeper into algorithm fundamentals or something like neural networks. And again, you get a 7-day free trial of Brilliant Premium using the link in my description. And right now you also get a 20% discount on an entire year of Brilliant Premium. So go check it out at the link in the video description. And thank you again to Brilliant for sponsoring this video and just being a long-term partner of this channel. All right, so the third project is actually building a game of some kind. And the reason for suggesting this project is that there's actually a lot of different problems that will come up when you're building a game versus when you're building just a static app. And the reason for that is that people using games will usually try to look for loopholes and things that can go wrong. They will try to cheat the game. Whereas if you build like a to-do list app, no one will try to cheat your to-do list app. So they might find bugs in it, but they won't be as harsh or as critical or as diligent about finding those bugs. Whereas if you build a game, people will actively look for the bugs because they will be trying to cheat or win the game in some way. So that's actually a really good way to learn about finding bugs and kind of teaching you a different way of thinking. Another reason is that this is probably the easiest to monetize, although I think a lot of people underestimate how hard it actually is to build a successful game or a successful app. We look at things like Flappy Bird and it feels like, oh, that's just so simple, I could build something like that. But I think it's actually a lot harder than most people think, and it's not a get-rich-quick scheme or anything like that. But still, having said that, I will also say that the global gaming industry is around $300 billion a year, a worldwide industry. And the movie industry, as a comparison, is only $270 billion per year. And the global app market is $400 billion per year, where a large portion of the global app market is actually games. Now, I'm not really a big gamer myself, but here's a chart to show the market share in terms of revenue for different types of games. And if we look here, we can see that it seems like the best option here is to go for a puzzle type of game. And so a great way to get started here is to build a simple tic-tac-toe game or a chess game of some kind. And so yeah, the way that I look at it is that I think that building games is sort of a worthwhile pursuit because it has a lot of different potential benefits. First of all, you'll build a game that you can potentially release, which has the potential to then make some money for you if it becomes popular. And then the second thing that you'll get out of it is what I like to call like the game dev brain. And this, like I said at the start, it's a bit different than the regular programmer brain because what you have to think about as a game dev is actually like people will be trying to cheat your game, so you need to figure out all the potential edge cases. All right, so now for the fourth project, which is a hacker-style chat app. And now you might be thinking, why would you want to build a chat app? What's the point of that? But the point is that with this project, you'll learn a little bit about the basics of networking and servers. You could also add a database to this project and then make the messages within the app actually permanent. And that way you've actually created a project that will allow you to build pretty much whatever you imagine, whether it's Facebook, Instagram. My imagination isn't that great, but yeah, you can pretty much build whatever you imagine once you've built a project like this. And if you've watched Mr. Robot, then you've probably seen the hacker style of chatting that they do in the terminal. And I always thought that that was really cool. And so if you want to be as cool as Mr. Cool himself, aka Mr. Robot, then you could try your hands at actually building the hacker style chat app that they use themselves. And this is a really good project to do because it will teach you some of the basics of threading and sockets, and you'll also touch a little bit on servers and using them. And it's also a fairly easy project to actually do. And what's even better is that if you want to, you can actually add in a Raspberry Pi and you can create your own little local web server where you actually host the messages that your friends can then connect to. So you have a really private way of messaging with your friends. And that way you also get some experience hosting a local web server yourself. All right, so now for the fifth project, which is an API project. And the reason that I think you should do this is because it kind of unlocks an infinite, it's almost like unlocking the next level in life where you just find out that there's so many things that you can do. And it's also really good for your resume. And so the thing with APIs is that pretty much everything around us has an API of some kind. Your local train station or like train that the public transport that you take to work, that probably has an API of some kind that you could tap into or connect to in some way if it's public. And you can actually find out specific details about whether your tram or train or bus is late. And then you can create some sort of project that actually notifies you that, okay, it's late by this much if it impacts you. And there's also usually public APIs for things like supermarkets where you can actually scan different groceries, do different things with that, like a MyFitnessPal knockoff if you want to. There's also like bird APIs where you could actually get the names of different birds, do lots of different things. There's so many API projects that you could do. And so I really think that every programmer should know how to work with an API, whether it's just working with it like requesting it, or whether it's actually building it out yourself. The building it out yourself, not necessarily the most necessary, but it's something that I think is also good to kind of know a little bit about. Because if you know more about that, then you'll understand how to work with the API better. And one of the bigger things for me when I got started with API projects was that I didn't really understand the documentation. Like, it was really difficult for me to actually read the documentation and understand what I should do. It almost felt like they left stuff out of the documentation that didn't, like, it felt like they didn't actually explain all of the stuff. But what I've noticed is that this is something where you just need to spend time looking at API documentation and working on different projects yourself. And once you've done that a lot, then you'll actually become better at reading that documentation. You'll be able to tie the different dots together and understand what you should do and how you should do it because you've done it before. And so sometimes they do actually leave certain things out, but that's because it's kind of expected that you'd understand how to do that yourself. But this may not be the same for you. Maybe you just look at the API documentation and you just understand it straight away. But for me, it was kind of a thing of like, I needed to just read lots of documentation and do lots of different projects. And now I feel like I'm fairly comfortable, at least, working with the different APIs because I know sort of what they're looking for, what they want me to do. That's been my experience at least. And so I think that's a really good project to have on your resume. It kind of shows that you know how to work with them. And that will be really positive for an employer. And so other than just unlocking like a whole new level to life of like projects that you could do on your own, it's also a really good thing to put on your resume, because a lot of jobs will actually require you to work with an API in some sort of way. Even if you're just like a front-end developer, you'll usually, in my experience at least, end up having to request some data from an API of some kind, and you'll need to just understand a little bit about how that works. And so having a project like this on your resume will be really good for getting a job, even if it is in front-end development. And so these projects kind of show a general degree of competence, in my opinion, and they also show a high degree of passion if you've done all of them. And so for me, that would really weigh in very heavily. It would be a very strong argument for hiring a person like that. If I saw someone like that, I would essentially be looking for a role that they could fill, because I know that this person will be competent enough to actually learn whatever it is that they need to learn, but also passionate enough to learn it really fast, which is also really important. So yeah, I hope that these projects either gave you some inspiration for what to put on your resume, or for just projects that you want to try in your free time. Either way, I really hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope I'll see you in the next one.